everyone, I'm Lisa and this is Bariatric Tidbits. Many of my followers have been asking me for some bariatric friendly breakfast ideas. In today's video, I am sharing some of my favorite recipes for breakfast chaffles. We will be making both sausage breakfast chaffles and bacon breakfast chaffles. Sound good? Let's get into it. If you are asking yourself, what the heck is a chaffle? Let me explain. A chaffle is a low-carb keto version of a waffle. The original basic chaffle recipe is a half cup of shredded mozzarella cheese and 1 large egg. That's it. You can't get simpler than that, right? The problem with the original recipe, for me anyway, is that it tastes really eggy and not much like a waffle at all. I have discovered that by adding only 2 simple ingredients, I can eliminate the majority of the eggy taste from a chaffle recipe, and these 2 ingredients will give it a less dense, fluffier texture, much more like a waffle. Want to know how? Just keep watching. I am going to be meal prepping our breakfast chaffles today, so I am more than doubling the recipe. However, I will also share with you the base recipe and give you an idea of how you can change up those ratios if you want to meal prep yours as well. I will have the base recipe as well as my meal prep version of the recipe outlined in the description box below. Guys, I've eaten chaffles a lot over the years, but this is actually my first time meal prepping a large quantity. So keep your fingers crossed that it turns out well and then I hit my ratios. My goal is to make at least 8 the first time and sort of see how that goes, see how long it takes us to eat those, and then from there I can adapt my recipe. As I mentioned, my goal is 8 chaffles out of the recipe that I am creating today. However, you will have to wait till the end of the video to see how that turns out for me and see if my hopes were dashed. Pun intended. You'll get that joke a little later.
On the screen, you should see the base recipe, which makes 2 chaffles. All you need to do to meal prep these chaffles is figure out the ratios. For example, I am hoping to get 8 chaffles today, so I will be using 4 large eggs. First, we will add our eggs to our mixing bowl. Use pasture-raised organic eggs if you can. These taste best and have the best nutritional value. Once you have added all your eggs to your bowl, give them a quick whisk to beat together the whites and the yolks. Next, let's shred up 2 cups of mild cheddar cheese. If you are making the base recipe, you will use a half cup. I like mild cheddar in this recipe, but you can use whichever type of low-carb cheese you like. I do recommend shredding the cheese yourself to avoid any hidden carbs. Let's go ahead and add our freshly shredded cheese to our mixing bowl and fold it in with your favorite spatula. This is coconut flour. I am adding in 4 teaspoons. If you are making the base recipe, you will use 1 teaspoon. This is one of the ingredients that helps rid our chaffles of that overpowering eggy taste. It gives them a bit of a crispy outside and makes them taste a bit more like a waffle. I like coconut flour because it has a fine texture and not that grainy texture you can get from almond flour. If you prefer, you can use almond flour instead. However, the ratio is 1 tablespoon of almond flour to 1 teaspoon of coconut flour. Now that we have added our coconut flour, let's fold it into our batter. This is baking powder. I am using 1 teaspoon, but if you are making the base recipe, you will use a 1/4 teaspoon. The baking powder is used as a leavening agent and will help our batter to rise, giving our chaffles a fluffier texture, more like an actual waffle. When adding your baking powder, be sure to sprinkle it and not dump it in. This will help to avoid clumps. Let's fold our baking powder into our batter just until combined. Earlier in the week, I meal prepped some sausage crumbles and some bacon, which I diced up for this recipe. Normally, I would simply add a couple ounces of my meat protein to the batter, but since I am making 2 separate recipes, I am going to hold off on the meat protein for just a bit later.
This is where the dashed pun comes into play, I'm going to be making my chaffles on the Dash Mini waffle makers. I already had one Dash Mini waffle maker, but I recently decided to purchase a set, and this has 3 minis inside. You have a regular waffle maker like the one I already have. You have one that is flat on the surface so it can actually make pancakes, and then you have one that's a griddle, so we could probably actually make a sausage patty or perhaps a mini bariatric sized burger on this one. I will go ahead and link the set and a single Dash Mini waffle maker in the description box below in case you want to purchase one for yourself, but you will probably be able to make this recipe on a regular waffle maker if you already have one. The Dash Mini waffle maker has a 4-inch surface, and it is a non-stick surface. And you only have to cook these for about 3 to 4 minutes, so it's really fast, really simple, and it's bariatric friendly because of the actual size. The 4 inches, perfect for us, right guys? In regards to the amount of batter that we are going to put on the Dash Mini waffle maker, I recommend about a 1/4 cup. If you are not using a Dash Mini waffle maker, but using a regular waffle maker, to be honest, I've never tried to make a chaffle on a regular waffle maker, but if I were going to make a recommendation for you, I would say start out with a 1/2 cup of the batter, and then you can make adjustments along the way if you need to. Something I would like to point out is that I do not math well. So when I divided up my sausage and my bacon for this recipe, I actually doubled it because I wasn't being careful and using my head. But you'll see that I take the actual serving that I have divided out onto the plate and half that for each waffle. So I end up using about 1.5 ounces of meat protein per chaffle.
I have already plugged in my mini waffle makers so they can begin preheating. The Dash Mini waffle maker has a blue indicator light that will illuminate once the preheating process has completed. Although the waffle maker has a non-stick surface, I still like to spray the surface slightly with a non-stick avocado oil spray to prevent sticking. Now that we have prepped our waffle makers, let's start making our chaffles by adding a 1/4 cup of our chaffle batter to our waffle makers. Once I have dumped my 1/4 cup of batter onto the cooking surface, I use my spatula to press it down just a bit so I can add my diced bacon to the top. I divided my diced bacon into 4 3-ounce portions, however I will only be adding 1.5 ounces to each chaffle. Once we add our meat protein to the top, we simply close the lid. The Dash Mini waffle maker has heating elements in both the top and the bottom, so there's no need to flip our chaffle. I also like to place something under my mini waffle makers in case some of the batter oozes out. Today I am repurposing a piece of aluminum foil. I did find this batter in particular is pretty thick, so I didn't have any oozing with this particular recipe. The cooking time for our chaffles is about 3 to 4 minutes. A good indicator that they are done is when the steam stops escaping from the sides of the waffle maker. I did go ahead and flip them over just so that you could see how perfectly cooked they are on both sides. I continue repeating these same steps, attempting to get 4 bacon breakfast chaffles and 4 sausage breakfast chaffles. Let me know in the comments, do you prefer sausage or bacon? I am on team sausage, however the bacon was pretty darn good as well. I moved my chaffles to a platter to cool, but after finishing the cooking process, I realized they were sweating on the bottom, so I chose to move them to a cooling rack to finish cooling. I would recommend letting them cool for about 2 to 3 minutes before eating to allow them to crisp up just a bit. However, if you are meal prepping your chaffles, you should allow them to cool completely before storing them. Once you've let your chaffles cool, you can store them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. I thought this lock and lock airtight bread container was perfect. You can store your chaffles in the refrigerator for 3 days for best results, but I wouldn't recommend more than 5 days total. This container also works well for freezing. You can keep chaffles in the freezer for up to 6 months. If you decide to freeze them, I would recommend placing a small piece of parchment paper or wax paper in between each chaffle so they don't freeze together. They may break if you try to separate them once frozen. You can reheat them straight from frozen when ready to enjoy. To reheat your chaffles, I recommend dropping them in the toaster. I found it is the fastest and easiest method. However, the toaster oven, air fryer, or conventional oven at 350 degrees will also work. I don't recommend microwaving as the result is a limp and soft chaffle. Typically, I will serve myself 2 breakfast chaffles with a small side of fruit. Use whatever sugar-free or low-carb toppings you prefer. Imagine a sugar-free whipped topping with some strawberries. Doesn't that sound delicious? Or perhaps a sugar-free jam is great. Chalk Zero makes a delicious strawberry jam. My favorite topping is a sugar-free maple-flavored syrup. Both the Keto and Chalk Zero brands are sugar-free. The Keto has the least amount of total carbs, but it is a bit runny. My favorite of the two is Chalk Zero as it has a thicker consistency. If you need a discount code for Chalk Zero, use code Bariatric Tidbits for 10% off your order. My favorite food tracking app is Carb Manager. I have created these recipes into Carb Manager so I can share the macros with you. Just remember, if you use different brands of products, a different cheese or different meat protein, your macros will be different. So I recommend building your recipe into your favorite food tracking app to determine the exact macros for your recipe. The recipes I created do not include any of the toppings. Let's go over the macros, starting with the bacon breakfast chaffle. And just FYI guys, all of my recipes are for 1 serving, which is 2 chaffles, and they both weigh about 2 ounces each, so for a total of 4 ounces. The calories for the bacon breakfast chaffle are 230. The total carbs are 0.7, net carbs are 0.2, the protein is 14.1, and the fat is 18.8. For the sausage breakfast chaffle, the calories are 214, total carbs 1.4, net carbs are 1, protein is 10.7, and the fat is 18.5.
All right guys, it is time for a taste test. As I mentioned earlier, this is my favorite way to have chaffles. A little bit of sugar-free maple flavored syrup like the Chalk Zero is my all-time favorite. And then just a little bit of fruit on the side. A low-carb fruit that's really good is strawberries. So yummy. So let's go ahead and give it a taste test. If you're missing waffles, I highly recommend you give this a try. There's so many different variations to a chaffle recipe. We will definitely make more of those in the future. That is so good. Let's try it with a bite of strawberry. Delicious. This chaffle recipe is a fantastic breakfast option. I find them very filling since they have so much protein, and I also love how low in carbs they are as well. They are a little higher in fat, however, because they do have a lot of fatty types of meats in them, and they also have a lot of cheese, but they are delicious. It's more of a keto recipe, I guess, because of the higher fat, but if you don't mind that, I'd say go for it. You can always adjust the recipe a bit to suit your needs a little bit better. Maybe use a lower fat cheese, and you could also use a lower fat protein. So instead of a pork sausage or pork bacon, especially if you're someone who doesn't eat pork, you can instead use a turkey sausage or turkey bacon. I really hope you enjoyed today's video and decide to make these breakfast chaffles for yourself. If you do, please be sure to take a picture and tag me over on Instagram because I would love to see your photos. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you will enjoy this one just as well. I made it just for you. And if you're not already subscribed, just go ahead, click my face right here, and you'll become a member of the Bariatric Tidbits tribe. See you guys in the next one.